This is a book video, but I haven't really worked out the setup for the book videos yet. So I'm over here. It's fine. I read a book called Mephisto by Klaus Mann. Here it is. And Mephisto is a guy in Nazi Germany who's an actor, and he plays the role of Mephostophilis in Faust. But the thing is, I don't know about Faust. I mean, I know a guy makes a deal with the devil and then tragedy happens, but like, that's it. That's all I've got. So I thought, okay, if this book made me think a lot, surely I should first read Faust and we should talk about Faust, right? So obviously, I don't know if it's obvious. I don't know what the crossover between my channel and my other channel is, but I'm a physicist over there on my other channel, which means I did like a shit ton of school, but I never went to book school. I never like learned how to read books or learned how to analyze books. So now as an adult, I've kind of been like attacking the classics. I like to approach it like coursework. Like I like to read essays and read like undergraduate theses on these classic books. Check out this video. Nope. This video. Check out this video where I read like 4 different versions of Medea. It's just something I like to do, but I didn't know where to start with Faust. Actually, let me tell you my thought train. So the Faust myth, guy makes a deal with the devil, tragedy happens, shows up a lot in like Americana, you know, the devil in Daniel Webster, the devil in Tom Walker. Those are Fausts, right? Those are Faust stories. Robert Johnson, guitarist, rumored to have made a deal with the devil to get good at guitar, and then, you know, tragedy happens. Although the Coen brothers movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, is a movie with a Faust in it, right? The guitarist, he's a Faust.
Say, I haven't seen a house out here for miles. What are you doing out in the middle of nowhere?
Well, I had to be at that there crossroads last midnight. Sell my soul to the devil.
What'd the devil give you for your soul, Tommy?
Well, he taught me to play this here guitar real good.
But Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is an Odyssey retelling. And I've read the Odyssey a bunch of times, and I don't remember a deal with the devil. And I mean, you might have realized this much earlier than I would, but that point, that moment, is when I realized that Faust is a very Christian myth. It's a very Christian devil, right? The Greek gods, they were assholes, and you might make a deal with them, and then like Zeus would rape you and turn you into a cow or something. But the moral of those stories would not be like, and that's why you only make deals with the good god and not the bad god. That's a very Christian thing to think, right? You know Disney's Hercules, the animated film. Put your pitchforks down. I know, it's canonically one of the most accurate portrayals of Greek gods and like classical myth in modern era. But like there's one little point I think is very not canonical, not correct when you think about the Greek gods. And it's Megara's deal with Hades. Like she sells her soul to the devil, and it's supposed to be like she sells her soul to Hades, but it's a very Christian version of a soul, and a very Christian version of hell, and a very Christian version of Hades cosplaying as like Satan or the devil or the beast from the Bible, right?
That's what got you into this jam in the first place, isn't it? You sold your soul to me to save your boyfriend's life. And how does this creep thank you? By running off with some babe.
So that's where my thought train ended, and I started thinking I should do some actual research, right? Faust is going to be some type of story that's like post-classical mythology, post-Bible, but pre-America, because the myth is in early America, and that is all I got. And that's where, I mean, it's obvious, but also I must say plainly, I am not a book doctor. I just read books for fun and talk about them for fun. If you are doing some sort of homework assignment, if you are writing some sort of paper on Faust, I beg you to turn anywhere else, because I just read all this for the first time, and I'm just like having fun with it and figuring it out. And like also just read the book. Like you're paying for school. You are paying so much money. Just read the book. What is wrong with you people? Okay, yeah, cool. Anyway, I Googled it, and Faust turns out real guy. Johann Georg Faust. He was a German alchemist, mathematician, and he lived around the year 1500. Or, maybe he wasn't a real guy. Or maybe he was two separate guys who both called themselves Dr. Faustus and went around doing magic and stuff. This is the folk legends, maybe totally made up story that inspired the literary tradition of Faust. Guy makes a deal with the devil, tragedy happens. And this literary tradition continues to this day. K-pop Demon Hunters, that's a Faust, right? Genu makes a deal with the devil, tragedy happens. It's the same bit. So the Faust Chapbook was first published in German in Frankfurt in 1587, Historia von die Johann Fausten, written by an anonymous author. And a chapbook is like the earliest form of like popular, fast printed literature. Like you would lay out a giant sheet of paper and stamp it and then fold it up and hand it to vendors who would sell them out of street carts. Unfortunately for me, I do not speak German. I do not read German. The text of this is online if you do and you would like to read this. Should I learn German? Let me know. Anyway, the first book I was able to read is the English Faust book, which was published in 1592. So this is just a translation of the German chapbook to English. The History of the Damnable Life and Deserved Death of Dr. John Faustus. It's a hell of a title. From this chapbook, we have learned that Dr. John Faustus is a man who seeks knowledge. He is a scholar. He has reached the end of what is known by men, and he wants more. And so he starts turning to the dark arts, and he summons an agent of the devil called Mephostophilis to him, and he's like, hey, tell me all the things I want to know. Teach me, and I will learn for 24 years, and then you can have my soul. So he signs in blood. He has made a pact with the devil. He has awarded Mephostophilis, and he has 24 years to, learn a bunch of things. What's interesting to me is that he really only does this one time. He's like, Mephostophilis, teach me of the planets, teach me how they move in the sky. I want to know it all. And then Mephostophilis kind of just goes through it. And then he's like, cool, I want a wife. I want to slay my enemies. And that's kind of the rest of the book. He spends the rest of his 24 years just kind of going around doing magic tricks. He sees a man pushing a wheel, cart full of hay. And he's like, hey, dude, how much for all the hay I can eat? And the guy's like, what? And then the guy watches in shock. What? As Mephistopheles, hexes Faust into being able to eat a bunch of hay. That's what he's doing with his devil magic powers. He has Mephistopheles steal wine and fancy prepared dinners from rich people and bring them to his house where he has guests. There is a chapter called How Dr. Faustus Borrowed Money from a Jew and Laid His Own Leg to Pawn for It, which, I'm going to be honest, kind of felt like a hate crime. He barely got some knowledge. He spent a lot of time doing a bunch of magic tricks. And then 14 years in, he starts to hear the ticking clock. And he's like, oh shit, I have sold my soul to the devil. My time is almost up. I'm about to be damned. What have I done? An important moment in the story is when an old man goes to Dr. Faustus and he's like, I can definitely see that you've sold your soul to the devil and you're doing devil magic. And the old man is like, listen, God is about forgiveness. Doesn't matter who you made a deal with. You can always be saved. You're not officially damned. Just repent or whatever. And he almost does. And then the real devil pops up with horns and a tail and hooves and things. And he's like, Faustus, what the fuck? We had a deal. So Faustus is like, oh shit, I'm sorry. I'll never renege on our deal again. And he's like, listen, it would be great though if I could marry Helena of Greece. And so Mephistopheles is like, yeah, dude, of course. And he makes her appear, but really she's the devil, in drag. And he stays with her. He has sex with her. They have, she gives birth to an adult male child called Justus Faustus, who's a seer of sorts. And when Faust does die, these characters disappear as if they never existed. But anyway, Faust spends his last few years just complaining, just whining about how he's damned and he's gonna lose his soul. And I forgot to say it, Faust is an academic, so his students are all around him, and they're like, "But you're so learned, surely something can be done." And he's like, "Nah, I really messed up." And then the day he's dying, he knows he's going to die. He gathers his students around and he's like, guys, I have some regrets. And then they go out to talk about what will be done. And when they go check on Dr. Faustus, he's disappeared. But when it was day, the students that had taken no rest that night arose and went into the hall in which they had left Dr. Faustus, where notwithstanding they found no Faustus, but all the hall lay besprinkled with blood, his brains cleaving to the wall, for the devil had beaten him from one wall against another. In one corner lay his eyes, in another his teeth, a pitiful and fearful sight to behold. Then began the students to bewail and weep for him, and sought for his body in many places. Lastly, they came into the yard, where they found his body lying on the horse dung, most monstrously torn and fearful to behold, for his head and all his joints were dashed into pieces. Sick, right? So I read it. I read the English translation of the German chapbook, The Damnable Death of Faust. So now I know the story, and this is just your standard Christian propaganda, right? Faust is a man who wants to know things. And in order to know those things, he is willing to give up his soul. And then, tragedy happens. It is a warning to scholars. It is a warning to people who at this time were scientists, even though they were calling it alchemy and stuff. Hey, don't be asking too many questions. Get right with God, right? And if you think about it, the story of Faust, man who seeks knowledge, makes a deal with the devil, tragedy happens. It's the oldest story in Christianity, right? Eve wants knowledge, listens to the snake, tragedy happens. It's the same thing. Don't seek knowledge, calm down, stop asking questions, seek God. That's the story. That's the story of Faust. So while the English Faust book was informative and fun to read, do I recommend it? No. I mean, not unless you're a big Faust guy like me. I'm now a Faust guy. I'm real into it. The reason I don't recommend it is because the chapbook directly inspires one of the most famous plays in the English language, which you should read instead, and it was also included in the same volume. Can't see it. There it is. Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. So the tragical history of the life and death of Dr. Faustus, or it's just called Dr. Faustus, was first performed in 1594. And it is directly inspired by the English chapbook, which Christopher Marlowe read and then just adapted into this play. So Christopher Marlowe is a very famous person and a very interesting person. He was an Elizabethan playwright and poet, and he died tragically young at the age of 29. But during his life, he did very interesting things like be a spy, be a vocal atheist at a time when that was a strange thing to do, and also kind of be openly gay, but maybe not really. And he kind of inspired the whole Elizabethan theater thing of spoken verse, right? Famously, Christopher Marlowe's plays directly inspired William Shakespeare, who, hot take, also wrote some really good plays, in my opinion. There's this really annoying, boring thing that happens when you talk about Christopher Marlowe, where they're like, Christopher Marlowe faked his death and he was actually Shakespeare. And Shakespeare authorship debates must be the string theory for Elizabethan historians. It's so boring. Have you read the plays, or do you just care about bullshit conspiracy theories? I cannot with these people. So in the Christopher Marlowe play, Faust is a scholar. He's a man of knowledge, but he wants more. He's unsatisfied with the amount of stuff men have learned, and he wants more. So he starts seeking information from the occult. And he's contemplating doing some devil magic stuff when he is visited by, he can't see these creatures, but a bad angel and a good angel. And the good angel is like, no, don't summon the devil, just pray to God. And the bad angel is like, do it. Do it. And there's just a lot of old-timey devil stuff in this play. I enjoyed that aspect of it. When you picture the earliest Disney Halloween cartoons where the devil has red horns and a tail and there's a good angel and a bad angel, it's like that fun old-timey religious stuff. Anyway, so Mephostophilis shows up. Dr. Faustus thinks he's conjured him, but Mephostophilis is like, I go where my master commands me. In real life, Lucifer, the devil, has sent him, and he wants to make a deal. And Dr. Faustus is like, hey, I'm happy to make a deal. I'd love to make a deal. I want a wife. Let me slay my enemies. And Mephistopheles is like, absolutely not to that. What else? And he's like, okay, give me a book of knowledge. I want a book that has all the secrets. And Faustus starts waffling on giving his soul to the devil or whatever. So Lucifer shows up and they do like a little pantomime of the 7 deadly sins. I am envy, begotten of a chimney sweeper and an oyster wife. I cannot read and therefore wish all books were burnt. I am lean with seeing others eat. Oh, that there would come a famine through all the world, that all might die and I live alone. Then thou shouldest see how fat I would be. But must thou sit and I stand, come down with a vengeance. He's talking to the audience. It's a play. I like that guy. And then, much like in the chapbook, Dr. Faustus and Mephostophilis go around and do hijinks in Europe. Mephostophilis gives some guy horns, which is also very reminiscent of old-timey devil stuff. Does Lucifer in the Bible have horns? Is that a thing? He conjures Helen of Troy for some students, and he's like, man, I would love to have sex with her.
Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium?
That was rude. That was pretty fucking rude.
And then he starts regretting his decision. And his good angel and his bad angel show up. And his good angel is like, yeah, you regret your decision. It's never too late. You can be saved. Please, please. And then the devil shows up and he's like, what the fuck, dude? We already talked about this. And Faust is like, fine. If I can marry Helen of Troy, I'll still give you my soul. And so he does. And then right before he's about to die, he tells a bunch of scholars, like, I've got some regrets. And they start praying for him. And the last scene is Mephistophilis just like kind of dragging Dr. Faust away. Yeah. So the Christopher Marlowe play is literally just the chapbook, but written in like a more fun to read language with a bunch of jokes added in. The guy who edited this, David Wooten, says that like every other chapter was written by Christopher Marlowe and the other chapters were some guy. I literally just wrote some other guy. Do they not know? All right. So he suggests they have a collaborator, and you can kind of tell when you read it and also when you watch it, like the scenes go from very dramatic to like acting to like fart jokes. There's a scene where a man pisses on the audience. And that makes sense. There's these tonal shifts from scene to scene. But what gets me about the chapbook and also this play is that I approached Faust as like a guy who wants knowledge. Like all he wants to do is learn, right? He's so unhappy with the state of human understanding that he wants to give his soul, the only thing man has that is valuable in like the realm of gods and heavens and things. And he's willing to trade it to the devil for information, right? What would you ask about? Like, would you make this deal? I would. I'm a scientist, and I would ask a lot of science questions. I would spend my 24 years trying to understand the unanswered questions in physics, and I would write a lot of papers and give some talks and things and try to explain it to others. And then I would go to hell and I'd be like, worth it. Fucking worth it. Do you know what I mean? Like, why matter instead of antimatter? Show me the Big Bang. Do you know that we do not have the computing power to simulate the collapse of a star? Like, the scale is too big. Like, we're talking about an object the size of a star, unfathomably like large, and what makes it collapse are quantum effects, unfathomably small, right? And in order to simulate them, you need to have high resolution in all scales, and we can't do that. That's impossible. That's a hard computer problem. Show it to me, Mephistophilis. I was also thinking about aliens, like, do some sort of magic mirror thing. Let me see into an alien realm. Where the aliens, like, what kind of tech do they have? What could I ask about for that? But then this is like a Christian play, right? And I remember this time in high school where I asked this very religious kid if he believed in aliens. And he was like very condescending. He was like, well, Angela, I think if there were aliens, God would have mentioned it in the Bible. So I don't think there are aliens in Christianity. So I don't think the Christian devil could or would show me aliens. But I would ask. Right? What does Faust do? He claims he wants knowledge. He looks at one astronomy book for like 1 second and then he's like, let's fuck with the Pope. Let's slay my enemies. Let me fuck the most beautiful woman of history. And like all he actually wants, he claims he wants knowledge, but really he wants to be famous for doing magic in front of emperors. Bro, I thought you were a knowledge seeker, but you're a phony. All right? You don't want knowledge. You want magic. You want devil magic. Faust, I'll say it, is a bad guy. Like, he claims he wants knowledge, but he wants to slay his enemies. He claims he wants knowledge, but the first thing he asks for is a wife. Like, you couldn't get a wife? You were a scholar. You had a job. You had money. You couldn't get a wife? Like, what's wrong with you, man? When I read Mephistophilis in the play and in the chapbook, I read him as kind of like a lurch character, like a silent butler type who's just like taking commands and acting on them. But his character, I guess with stage directions, when put on in a play, when I watched Mephistophilis in the play, he was a much more interesting character. He was, he's being acted by an actor, of course. He's lamenting the loss of paradise. When he says, like, I cannot talk about heaven, I cannot talk about paradise, I cannot talk about God, he seems sad. And when he looks at Faust, so willing to give up his soul the way Mephistopheles has done, or do angels have soul? I guess given up his access to God, he pities him. He looks at Faust as if he's a fool, as if he's an idiot. And he's much more than just an agent of the devil. So the Globe Theatre of London put on Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe in 2011, and you can buy a ticket online and watch it, and it's really good. I did buy a ticket, and I also donated $10 to the Globe to support their work. The production value of this recording is amazing. I'm happy to support their work, but then I realized I couldn't download it from that website, so I would have to find it somewhere else, and you can just watch it on YouTube. You can just watch it on YouTube, but I'm not going to link to the YouTube version. You should support the Globe Theatre, support the arts. Come on, people. But yeah, Faust is really great in this play. He's still kind of an asshole. He's still kind of a bad guy. But Mephistopheles in this play is fantastic. I am not going to pretend I watched more than... God, I watched Doctor Who until David Tennant died, I think. And then I lost interest. Spoilers. Spoilers for 2007 Doctor Who. But this guy, he's like a Doctor Who guy, right? So like if you're into that, he's great as Mephistopheles. If that interests you. The comedy bits are, of course, much funnier when you see them acted out.
A goblet. Dick, I, a goblet. She means a cup.
And seeing the audience respond is fun. The Globe Theatre looks miserable. Do you see how the people are just standing there and they're like all pushed up against the stage? What a nightmare. I showed this to my partner and I was like, I guess I would never want to go to the Globe Theatre. And he's like, I'm sure they also have seats. And that's when I realized I'm the bourgeoisie. I would rather pay for a seat. Standing room only, no thank you. So Christopher Marlowe writes this play and it's first put on in 1594 and it becomes like an instant hit. One of the reasons is the religious themes of the play. And God, I don't care. I'm so sorry. I'm not interested in religion. I don't find it interesting. But I feel like if I don't mention it, people are going to think I don't realize the importance of the religion to the success of this play, or like I'm unaware of it. So briefly, this play is produced post-Protestant Reformation, and the people, they have some religious trauma, okay? And this play, which is written by an atheist or an accused atheist, really pulls at those themes which directly corresponds to its success. The Calvinists, the subgroup inside the Calvinists, the Puritans are like, whoa, Marlowe, you heathen, how dare you? How could you suggest that Faust could be redeemed? How dare you insinuate that Faust could change his fate? Faust is damned from birth. His damnation ordained, immovable, and forever will be. And all the non-weirdos, the non-freaks were like, hey, I'm pretty sure forgiveness was Jesus' whole thing, actually. Like, as discussed by Marlowe in the play with the Jesus insert in the old man, at any moment, Faust could have been like, fuck, that was a mistake. I'm so sorry. And he could have repented and he would have been able to go to paradise. The deal with the devil is not legally binding because God is God, actually. And that's the tragedy, right? That is the tragedy of Faust. He gave up on God when at any moment he could have been forgiven. It literally does not matter that he signed a pact with the devil in his own blood, because the blood of the covenant is thicker than the blood that you had to uncongeal with the fires of hell in order to sign the document with the devil, actually.
Mephostophilis, my blood congeals and I can write no more.
I'll fetch thee fire to dissolve it straight.
And then, of course, the Puritans continue to freak out. They move here. They become my ancestors and also my problem. So blame Christopher Marlowe, I guess. But what is more interesting to me is Faust as a character. Faust is a man who seeks knowledge. He is a man who is willing to give up the most important thing, in religion, your soul. He is willing to give that up in a trade for knowledge. At least that's what it says in the tin. That type of character is not really explored in Marlowe's Faust. So I found that exploration of Faust as a guy who seeks knowledge just like a little bit disappointing. Would I recommend this play? Absolutely. And also, I would recommend watching it. Like, reading it was great. I love to read notes that explain things to me, but watching it was fantastic. The exploration of the myth in itself was a little disappointing. Like, a man who seeks knowledge, but like really he's just kind of like a bad dude who wants to do devil magic to impress some emperors. Do you know what I mean? So early in high school, I read these two books back to back for no reason. I wanted to read more classics and I picked these two. And it ended up being that these two books were just insurmountably depressing. And I loved that. I think a lot of people who read these books hate them because they are depressing. But like when you're a sad 14-year-old, it's just like that is my whole personality now. Give me the tragedies, just directly into my veins. The two books were The Sufferings of Young Werther, which came out in 1774, and Ethan Frome, which came out in 1911. And honestly, maybe it's not that interesting that I paired these because these books, spoilers, they're both tragic love triangles that end in sadness for all parties involved in those love triangles. And honestly, maybe it's not even interesting that me as a 14-year-old was interested in these two books because they're both love triangles. And I was in high school right at the end of the Twilight thing. So maybe 14-year-old girls just like really loved love triangles. But I loved these books. I absolutely read them to bits. I still really like both of them. Big recommend if you like sadness or if you participate in sadness. And these are like the original versions that I had 20 years ago. They are just torn up. And I don't want to do my whole rant, my whole bit on how print on demand is ruining publishing and you can't even buy books anymore. God forbid you want to try to buy a copy of Faust because you will be sent trash and it will take you months. You can only buy books in person now. I'm not going to do that. We're not going to do that today. You know how I feel about it. Anyway, the reason I bring up The Sorrows of Young Werther, I'm just realizing right now that this book says The Sufferings of Young Werther. When did this come out? How old is this? I don't have time to look into this. This is an exercise for the reader. Did they change the title for America at some point? The reason I bring this up is because the man who wrote this book also wrote the most famous version of Faust. Let me find it. Which was published in 1808. This is a version of Faust. Yeah, I bought a vintage copy off of eBay because fucking print on demand. Oh my God, I paid $30 for this. It's beautiful. It's illustrated. So this book, this version of Faust, was actually written in the 1770s and 1780s, right along with The Sorrows of Young Werther. And I first read this book as a child. I never discussed this book with anyone. I just read it and I was like, I love classics, I love reading, and I read this book. And because I read this book and I didn't discuss it with anyone, and I never said this out loud, this book is The Sufferings of Young Werther by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Look at this. You're a 14-year-old from Eastern Kentucky. You see these letters in this order. How do you pronounce that? Goethe. What else could it possibly be? Should I learn German? I watched a bunch of lectures and they all said like Goethe. But if you ask Wikipedia, it says Goethe. I'm going to say Goethe. And you're not going to laugh at me. You're going to be kind to me. I went into my background. I'm just a little guy from Eastern Kentucky. And you cannot make fun of me if I accidentally slip up and call the man who wrote the most famous version of Faust Goethe. Because that's what it looks like. And it's cool when people learn things by reading. And it's not their fault if they mispronounce it, especially when you understand what I'm talking about. Actually, it makes you an asshole for pointing it out. Whatever. Okay, so Goethe. So Goethe was just like a little guy when he wrote this book. He was 25 years old. And immediately upon publication, oh, should I tell you what this book is about? It's a love triangle. And this woman is engaged to this guy, and then she falls in love with Werther. And Werther is like, oh, fuck. Like, she can't marry me. I'm in love with her. She's in love with me. This is ruining her life. It's ruining my life. And then he ends his life. And, spoilers for the 250-year-old book. This book is kind of the archetype for unrequited love, and it kind of started the Romanticism book genre in Germany. And Goethe becomes the most famous author in the world at age 25. And the same year that he was writing this, he had started working on his Faust play. And his Faust play gets published in 1808, again, to great success. So this version of Faust that I have is a illustrated gift edition, and it's absolutely beautiful. And it's interesting to read a play this way because it has the notes in the play. Like, oftentimes when I read plays, it doesn't say, like, he makes this gesture, but this one does, which made it nice to read. But just like, I will just stop trying to show you the illustrations on the camera, and I will take some pictures and show you. But this book is absolutely beautiful, and I recommend specifically this version of Faust if you can find it. But anyway, before we talk about the play, I want to talk about the time difference between Marlowe's Faust and Goethe's. Marlowe writes his very famous play based on the chapbook Faustus, and it was first performed in 1594. Over 200 years later, this Faust was published in 1808. Goethe publishes his Faust play. 200 years. So in that time, in those 200 years, Faust has become the German legend. It has become German history. Goethe would have been incredibly familiar with Faust, with Marlowe's version of Faust, since he was a child. Even if he never read the play, he would have seen it, he would have known it. Listen, so I watch a lot of Vlogmas throughout the year. I'm a sad person, and seeing Christmas things makes me feel feelings, and I'm allowed to have that. And don't read into it. But when you watch a British Vlogmas, especially British vloggers who have children, I only watch the ones that don't show their children because I don't want to see them. I think it's weird. But when you watch the British vloggers who have children, they'll be like, Vlogmas, day 7, I've booked a panto. Okay? Booked a panto for Christmas Eve or something, which means they booked a pantomime, which means they are going to a play. Now, obviously, people all over the world, of every single culture that has ever existed, every human being was part of a culture that watches plays. I'm not saying plays are unique to Europe. I am saying pantomime, where on holidays you go watch the same play that you've watched for your entire life, where it's cross-dressing and fart jokes and puppets and shit, is a very European thing to do. So Goethe himself would have booked a panto to go see Marlowe's Faust. He would have seen it once a year since he was a child. The story, the legend of Faust, would have been so baked into his cultural context that, of course, as the world's most famous author, he would of course adapt that story to be about modern Germany and modern interpretations of German religious questions, not modern for us, but modern for 19th century Germany, Victorian Germany. Doesn't even make sense to call it that. Let's talk about the play. Let's talk about Faust. The most famous version of Faust, the German version of Faust, came out in 1808 by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. He, as an author, seems very meta. The play starts with an actor and a director and a playwright discussing the importance of plays to culture. And then, once they start the play, the actors who played those people now play like God, Mephistophilis, and Faust. I just forgot Faust. Okay. So that's the opening. And then we jump to a scene, maybe in heaven, a prologue, where God and Mephistophilis make a bet about who can win Faust's soul. In this play, Faust is a famous scholar, as in Marlowe's play, and God describes him as being confused, but he seems confident that Faust will choose the right path. And Mephistopheles is allowed to kind of lead him astray, and if he's able to, he will win Faust's soul. But again, God seems pretty confident. And this is a reference, of course, to Job in the Bible. That's right. I read the Bible one time. I get it. Job is a righteous man. He's a wealthy man in like money, but also in happiness and his family life. And he's also incredibly devout. And God asks the enemy what he thinks of Job. And the enemy is like, listen, it's real easy to be pious and godly when you have a great life and you're rich and everything's going your way. But like, surely if his life wasn't so good, he would curse God. So God is like, let's test it. Let's fuck his shit up. And they kill his children, and they take his money, and they take his house, and they give him these like heinous boils all over his skin, and it's like very painful. And Job is like, what the fuck? Where is divine justice? What is happening? Why does God punish me, devout, godly, pious, and not the wicked? And God is like, you try running the universe. God is good. And Job is like, damn, that's right. God is good. Which is just such an unsatisfying answer to the question of divine justice. I find it offensive. Do Christians ever talk about how fucked up the story is? Like, God kills Job's children, and the message of the story is, stop asking questions. God is good. You can't understand. You won't understand. God is good. I did phrase that as, do Christians realize how fucked up this story is? Do they ever talk about this? But like, that was a rhetorical question. I have no interest in actually listening to anyone answer that question. I realize if you believe in a just God, you somehow have to wrap your noodle around like the fact that babies are born with cancer, or babies are born into war zones, or why millions of people go hungry when like 200 billionaires build bunkers and burn the planet, and apparently also just are pedophiles. How that logic works out for you, I'm happy for you, or I'm sorry that happened, but I am not interested in the answer to that question. But you know what? That's actually not true. If you are the voice of a generation, the most influential writer of your time and your country, and you have answered the question of divine justice over 5,000 lines of beautiful poetry and prose, and your work is a celebrated classic, studied and discussed for 200 years after it's produced, I am very interested in how you answer the question of divine justice, actually. But otherwise, like if you're just some dude, I'm not that interested. In the Faust play by Goethe, Heinrich Faust is a scholar. He's a learned man, also unsatisfied with the level of knowledge that humans have reached. He seeks information from the dark arts, as you do, and he's still unsatisfied. But the thing is, so Goethe's Faust is not the same as Marlowe's Faust. Marlowe's Faust seeks an audience with Mephistopheles and then immediately jumps to like slaying his enemies and impressing emperors with his knowledge of magic. But Goethe's Faust is seeking knowledge in order to find meaning. He's just a deeply unsatisfied person. This deep sadness to this Faust reads a lot like depression, melancholy. Like he is at the point where nothing matters. He has been searching for meaning through his studies, and he has found no meaning. He has found no reason for life, and that leaves him empty. But he is still searching. And Faust, in this book, is contrasted by his student, Wagner, who's also in the chapbook. But here, Goethe shows Wagner as like the opposite of Faust. He's a much more like Marlowe's Faust. Wagner is Faust's student, because he's so impressed with his academic knowledge. And Wagner doesn't understand why Faust is sad. He's like, you've reached the top. You're famous for reading books. Like, why are you sad? You've done it. I want to do that. And that's an underlying theme in this version of the play, which is like, what is the purpose of academic work if all you do is study and never produce? And Faust reaches sadness at that, where Wagner is much more of the type of academic that Goethe is critiquing, like this academic who is getting knowledge just to be a famous scholar. And like, what are you going to do with it though? Like, what is your life if all you did was study philosophy or theology or economics, but you never added anything to the field, if you never built anything, if you never did anything? And I don't know if I'm reading too much into it or if I'm shoving my own thoughts and opinions on this, but for me, the biggest shift between Marlowe's Faust and Goethe's Faust is that Marlowe's Faust takes place at the tail end of the 1500s. Goethe's Faust is published in 1808. Between those two times, the whole of the scientific revolution happened, right? A lot of questions that used to be questions for God became questions for man. They became experiments. They became data, right? The presentation of Faust versus Wagner, I'm going to say Wagner, is that Wagner wants to be a famous thinker and Faust wants answers, right? Faust has reached famous thinker territory, but has he done anything? Has he discovered anything? Has he built anything? Has he made any new technology? No. And that makes him sad. Faust is sad. He's a sad little guy. So he goes to kill himself with poison, and then he hears the Easter bells. And it's not like religious guilt that prevents him from killing himself, like going through with it. It's more that he hears the Easter bells and he remembers the happiness of youth, the innocence. And it's at this moment in the play that I realized, okay, these are very different Fausts. Marlowe's Faust is very different from Goethe's Faust, but like the character I am interested in will not be found in this book either. The Faust I was kind of interested starting this whole journey was the guy who actually wants to seek knowledge. Like, you've been awarded all the knowledge in the world. What do you do with that? What do you build? And Marlowe's answer to that was like, give me a wife. Let me kill my enemies. Let me do magic for the Pope, right? And Goethe's Faust seems like he says he's seeking knowledge, but really he's seeking meaning. He's seeking like fulfillment. And that will not be, like, the answer is not knowledge for that, right? So neither of these books is going to give me the Faust I want. But also, I realized that version of Faust would be such a boring play. Like the version of Faust where he's like, give me all the knowledge, and then he sits in a room reading texts and studying and writing papers for 24 years and then dies under suspicious circumstances and goes to hell, is just not that interesting. No one would want to read that play. So, but honestly, Goethe's version of Faust, like a guy who's depressed, who's so lacking meaning that he just spends his whole life going to school until he completes school, comes out the other side still sad, still despondent, still without answers, without meaning. I mean, that's relatable. I'm on board with that, I guess. So the bells. Faust and Wagner, they walk into town, they see people celebrating Easter. Faust is sad and bored. He doesn't want to celebrate, he doesn't want to drink. He wants to go home and translate the Bible again. And a black poodle follows them. This play, Goethe's play, Faust, reminds me a lot of Dante's Inferno, where there's a lot of Christian imagery that is associated with Christianity, but it's not like in the Bible, so it's not like necessarily canon. The black dog thing is in movies and stuff. In the Bible, is the devil a black dog? And then you have Cerberus, who's also a black dog, but that's Greek mythology. The connection between Hades and hell and the Christian devil is weird. It's like Christianity very gluttonously ate all the other religions and just combined it. Do you know what I mean? So Faust lets the dog in, and Faust is translating the Bible and therefore reading the words out loud, and the dog starts to freak out and turns into a human version of Mephostophilis. Not like his real form, because I think his real form is like devil horns, hooves, tail, whatever, but like the human version. Also, I don't understand why the words of God would bother Mephistopheles, because in the prologue, he's just like literally chatting with God. Like they're in the same room, face to face, having a conversation. But maybe it was just for the bit, like just to convince Faust that he's a devil. Anyway, Mephistopheles is like, dude, I want to show you how good life can be. Give me your soul. And Faust is like, nah. So Mephistopheles is like, let's make a deal instead. I will give you whatever you want. You can live forever, and only when I show you a moment that gives you meaning, that gives you hope, that makes you say, stay, moment, stay, only then will I get your soul. And Faust, depressed, sad sack of a man, is like, well, yeah, whatever. There's no way you can do that because everything sucks and I'm sad. And even though Marlowe's Faust and Goethe's Faust make very similar deals, at this moment, if you know what happens in Goethe's Faust, it's at this moment only that Faust seems quite innocent comparatively, right? Marlowe's Faust seeks the devil out and he's like, fuck yeah, slay my enemies. And Goethe's Faust is like, fine, whatever. I guess I'll make a deal with the devil. Nothing matters. Faust didn't ask for this. God told Mephistopheles to do this, right? So Faust and Mephistopheles go out to a bar. I think Mephistopheles thought this would be a lot easier than it ends up being. He like plays some tricks on some drunkards and stuff, and Faust is like, whatever, I don't care about this. And so next they go see a witch. In Christianity, like witches are real, magic is real, and it's just like the work of the devil. So when Faust and Mephistopheles show up at this witch's house, she is like really excited. Really excited to see the devil. And she makes a little potion, which is again weird. Why can't the devil make this potion? Why do they have to go to a third party? But she makes a potion that takes Faust and makes him 30 years younger. And Faust like isn't interested in the vanity of youth, but Mephistopheles thinks that by making him younger, it will be a return to innocence. It'll be a return to like very strong emotions. And maybe that will give him that moment and he can win the bet. So then they go back to Faust's town, and right away, like the first woman he sees, Margaret, she's young, she's innocent. Faust is like younger and he's like lustful now, so he's like super into it. And Mephistopheles, who has to do his bidding, sneaks some jewelry into Margaret's room, and then Margaret's mom finds it and gives it to the church, and like this is a commentary on how like churches are greedy or something, whatever. Goethe's not an atheist. The author of this book has complicated views on religion, but he's not an atheist. He's more concerned about how the church controls the spiritual access of like modern normal people. That's kind of in this book. But that, to me, is not the most interesting part. Whatever. So Mephistopheles gives Margaret more jewels, and this time she hides them and keeps them. And then Mephistopheles arranges a meeting at Margaret's friend's Martha's place. And Mephistopheles shows up with Faust, and it's kind of like a double date. Mephistopheles, like, Martha's supposed to be like old and gross, like 30, disgusting. And Mephistopheles like flirts with her because he's like a trickster in this one. Margaret is just head over heels. Faust convinces her to sleep with him. He's like, let's do it. And she's like, I couldn't possibly, my mother, oh my goodness. So Mephistopheles gives Faust a potion that will put her mother to sleep. So she'll sleep soundly. Faust and Margaret can have sex. That's what he asks for. The devil can give him anything he wishes, and he was like, I'd like to have sex with this consenting young woman. All right. I mentioned earlier that the Faust in Goethe's Faust is very different from Marlowe's Faust, but the Mephistopheles in Goethe's Faust is also very, very different. In this version of the play, he is much more of a trickster. He is much more of like a Loki character. I would say like it's like a monkey's paw situation. Like Faust asks for a sleeping potion and Mephistopheles gives him something that kills the mother. Like she's asleep forever, but she gets pregnant and like her innocence, her future is gone. And Faust is like, he doesn't know this. He doesn't know about the pregnancy. He doesn't know about the dead mother. And he's like struggling with these feelings of like, I don't value anything, but like I enjoy spending time with this woman. Am I in love with her? Like, what is going on? And Mephistopheles is like, dude, no. This is lust. This is debauchery. So they go back to search for Margaret, and they run into Valentine, who hasn't been referenced yet. He just pops up all of a sudden, and Valentine is Margaret's brother, and he's like gonna kill the guy who impregnated his sister and destroyed her innocence. So Faust goes to fight him, and it's like a monkey's paw situation again, where Mephistopheles helps him in the fight, but really they kill Valentine. And in his dying breath, he's like, my sister is such a fucking whore. And then Mephistopheles and Faust escape.
Machst deine Sachen schlecht. Ich sag dir's im Vertrauen nur. Du bist doch nun einmal eine Hure. So sei es auch eben recht.
This isn't related to the book or the play. And it's kind of embarrassing that it took me so long to figure it out. But in both versions of this version of Faust that I read, they interchangeably referred to Margaret as Margaret and Gretchen. And I was like, are these two different women? And I Googled it. And it's like Margaret, Greta, Gretchen. Like Gretchen is a cute little nickname for Margaret. So once Faust gets to know Margaret, he calls her Gretchen. It's like a cute little nickname. You're welcome. If you were German, I think you would have just known that. I didn't. So now you're welcome. Okay. So Gretchen, she's at her lowest point. Her mother is dead. She killed her. Her brother is dead because of her. And in his dying breath, cursed her and her whore nature. And now also she is pregnant. She is pregnant and Faust has disappeared. She is feeling guilty. You know, a Christian guilt. And her life is over. She realizes she has no options. She sings a song, I think. I think it's a song. I'm not sure. It might just be like a speech where she heard other people discussing a different woman who got pregnant and the guy just disappeared. And they were like, her life is over. She's a garbage human. She will never be anything. And she is like, I'm in the same situation. If you've read Hamlet, her circumstances remind me of Ophelia's circumstances, right? Like they are these tragic characters promised a life by these men who just kill their family and disappear, right? They are left with no options of redemption or livelihood because of their circumstances, their place in society. The tragedy of these characters, Gretchen and Ophelia, is that they both realize they have no other option than to do the most drastic thing. Ophelia kills herself. Gretchen kills her child. Nothing could have saved them. Faust could not save Gretchen. Hamlet could not save Ophelia because their lives are dependent on their social circumstances, which were ruined by these men. There is literally no option for them but death, and that is the tragedy. So Faust and Mephistopheles go to Walpurgis Night, and they are nasty boys and they do nasty things. Walpurgis Night, I'm gathering, is a real thing in Europe. What are you guys doing over there? Where, I guess in the past, it was like the witches come out on Walpurgis Night and dance with the devil. But now it's like the European version of redneck builds a giant bonfire and like they all get drunk and have food and like it happens at the end of April. It sounds like a great time, but in the book, it's like this big party where there are witches and they're just doing nasty, nasty things. Mephistopheles tries to hook Faust up with a bunch of witches, and then Faust has this vision of Gretchen, so they go back, and time has passed. Gretchen has had the baby, but she's killed it. Spoilers, she kills the baby. She's straight up lost her mind. She's in jail. She's going to be put to death for the murder of this infant. Infanticide. That's the worst kind of murder. So Faust rolls up and he's like, hey, I have a magic devil. Let's escape. And she's like suddenly clear of mind and she sees Faust and she's like, I loved him. And then she sees Mephistopheles and she's like, he's the devil. I simply will not. And she says, I will die. I will ask God for forgiveness. And she does. And as she's doing this, Mephistopheles says, she is judged. And then a big booming voice is like, she is saved, like a football announcer or something.
Sie ist gerichtet.
Ist gerettet!
And then Mephistopheles pulls Faust away. Gretchen is, of course, murdered by the state, but it's fine because she goes to heaven. She is saved. It's fine. Her story is fine. It ends well for her, even though her whole family is dead and her baby's dead and she's dead. She is saved. And that's the end. I loved it. Big recommend. Big recommend on Faust. Goethe, turns out, best version of Faust, actually. So holy shit, right? Faust. Goethe's version of Faust. Faust is not really the main character of his story. The main character is Gretchen. Guy makes a deal with the devil. Tragedy happens, but not to him. He does not grow and change and learn, right? He watches Gretchen get saved. He is unmoved. He does not care. That moment where this woman he kind of loved, he kind of ruined and destroyed her, he made this woman go insane and do the worst, most unspeakable things, and he doesn't give a shit. He does not have that great moment that makes him say, stay, moment, stay. He does not save Gretchen. He rolls up, he ruins her life, murders her family, and watches her die. End of play. Okay, go back to the book of Job, right? God is testing Job's faith. He ruins Job's life, right? In Faust, God is confident that Faust has been confused, but he'll come around. He sends Mephistopheles to run a Job on Faust's life, but instead they both get together and just torture this poor innocent woman. And Faust is like, no response. Just like, cool, okay. He has no humanity. He has nothing. He watches Gretchen in her lowest moment, suffering all of this guilt. Because, like, Christianity often about guilt, right? Knowing her life is over, watches her turn to God, get redeemed, and he does nothing. He feels nothing. I feel like this ending is divisive. I've probably been putting up 2 different versions of Faust movies. One from 1926 by the German expressionist filmmaker who did Nosferatu, whose name is F.W. Marlowe. Also a West German film from the 1960s called Faust. The 1926 version changes so much of the story. It's a lot more like Marlowe than Goethe, but most importantly, it changes the ending. At the end, Faust goes, I wish I never made a deal with the devil. He turns old again. He runs up to the, what is that called? A pyre? A pier? That's another word I've never heard pronounced. P-Y-R-E. Like when you're setting someone on fire. He runs up to that. He's old, right? And then Gretchen, she's like crazy. She's killed her baby. She's killed her family. She's burning alive. And she sees his face. And he like flashes back. This is like a really solid movie for the 20s. He flashes back to young and she's like, oh, Henry, because his name's Heinrich Faust. And he and her just ride up to heaven. It's not God that makes a deal with Mephistopheles in that movie. It's like the Archangel Michael, and he pulls them up. And Mephistopheles is like, fuck, but we had a deal. And you know what, actually? You know what word broke the deal? You know what word did? Liebe. Is that how you say love in German? Should I learn German? It's love. Their love. Their love broke the curse. The 1960s film ends in the scripted way, right? She's in jail, and she's like, fuck, I'm gonna die. Please, God, please. And then God is like, she is saved. And Mephistopheles and Faust run away. And that's the end. That's the end of the play, movie, whatever. So, which ending do you think is better? Obviously, Goethe's version is better. He's a genius. It's perfect. But, like, it's also not really an ending. Like, Gretchen is saved. Great. That's the least they could do for her. But the end is Mephistopheles and Faust just running off. Like, if you start your story with a bet, we need to end our story with the conclusion of the bet. That's basic save the cat writing, right? If you introduce a bet, we need to see the resolution of the bet. And so I sought out a second version of Faust, perhaps an academic text, because it wouldn't be print-on-demand garbage, but also because maybe there would be some sort of essay by a scholar of German romantic literature who would tell me what the ending means and why the bet wasn't resolved. And I got this one. See that? It's Faust. A Tragedy, Parts 1 and 2, fully revised. There's a Part 2, baby. Part 2 of Faust. Of course there's a Part 2. You know when you're listening to Queen and We Will Rock You ends? And it just kind of goes, da, and it ends like not on the right note. It ends as if like you're expecting more. And that's because there's a second part of that song called We Are the Champions. Did I do that in the right order? I think I did that in the right order.
I've paid my dues time after time.
Because those two go together. Faust Part 1 ends that way. You're like, okay, this is an intermission, but this certainly isn't the end of the story. So settle in, boys. We're going to read Faust Part 2. It wasn't an ending because it wasn't an ending. It was the end of Part 1. Okay. I was very, very, very excited for Faust Part 2, not only because I had just read Part 1 and it was great, but also I want to know what happens next. But also there's this review on the back. Goethe's Faust is an enigmatic and perhaps barely translatable masterpiece. Its grotesque and exuberant Part 2 must be the most outrageous poem in the Western canon. Martin Greenberg's revised version conveys the outrage, yet also shows again and again why the poem does stand with major works of the Western tradition. It's grotesque and exuberant. Part 2. The words of Harold Bloom. Okay, fantastic. Harold Bloom. And I actually got this book for Christmas. It's Shakespeare, The Invention of Human. Every play, like a comprehensive discussion of every single Shakespeare play. I got this for Christmas last year. Have I read it? No, because I'm a piece of shit. I'm a garbage human, and it's just gonna sit there. And I read 11 versions of Faust, but did I read a book I got for Christmas last year 10 months ago? No. Anyway, so I read the essays at the start of this. I reread Part 1, and I read the notes, because sometimes it's fun to read a different translation and to read different notes to see what people think. Because like a translation like that one from the 1920s is going to be very different from a translation like in the early 2000s, and that's what makes reading classics fun. My only regret, though, before I start Part 2 is that I don't speak German, because here's the thing. The poetry in Part 1, this translation was better. It was beautiful. It's fantastic, right? This play is beautifully written. I don't think I mentioned that. Like the story is great, and I really enjoyed it, but it is written so beautifully. It is a beautiful play. It is a fantastic reading experience. And I often feel like that about translated fiction, where like if I read translated fiction and I really like it, I just imagine how good it must be in its original language and how it was meant to be read, right? And sometimes I'll read translated fiction and I don't like it. And I'm kind of like, maybe I don't like this because the translation is bad. Maybe I would like the author's voice in their native language, but I don't like it the way it's been reworded. And I don't want to diminish the work of Martin Greenberg here. It's great. I'm really enjoying it. I just wish I knew what it was actually saying. Should I learn German? Anyway, another thing is that Faust Part 1 was written at the same time as The Sorrows of Young Werther in the 1770s, or at least the first draft, right? He was a 25-year-old guy, and then he edited it for a decade, and then he threw it out into the world, right? He was the most famous author in the world, and he threw out Faust Part 1, and everyone loved it, right? He attacked the greatest story of his country and his background and his culture as a very young man, and he threw it out there, and everyone loved it. And for the next 60 years, Goethe worked on Part 2. He finished Faust Part 2 in his 80s. It was published the year that he died. An 80-year-old man is finishing the story of a young scholar who sees no meaning in life. Fuck, what a shift, right? What a shift. Like, that's got to be amazing. I bet the lyricism, the prose, all of it will change. But Martin Greenberg is just one dude. Martin Greenberg reads Faust 1, translates it, reads Faust 2, translate it probably within like 2 or 3 or 4 years, right? But Goethe spent 60 years on this book. His authorial voice must change, it must age, and man, I wish I could read German, because I bet that comes across, and I bet that would be really interesting to read. But anyway, let's read Faust Part 2. What the fuck was up with Faust Part 2? In Faust Part 2, when we get to Faust, he's like in a field. It reminds you of A Midsummer's Night's Dream, you know, when they're like kind of like under some sort of spell and it's like mystical and weird and they're not themselves. He's like that. Like Gretchen is dead and he absolutely couldn't care less. The way Gretchen was absolved through like prayer and like redemption. Faustus somehow also absolves, but by like not giving a shit. Like he does not care about what just happened. We see Wagner again, but time has passed and now he's like a professor and he's making a homunculus. And somehow Mephostophilis kind of co-opts this object. I think it's supposed to be a representation of science. And the homunculus and Mephostophilis and Faust travel through space and time. They go back to classical Greece. They try to like in the historical tale of Helen of Troy, they try to like save her. And of course, Faust is super into her and they marry and they have an adult son named Euphorion and they live on what I think is Mount Olympus. And Euphorion is like he's like a young romantic style guy and he does an Icarus. Like he climbs, he flames, he crashes, he dies, and Helen disappears in grief. And so they go and they do like some Greek battles, like as generals in real historical battles. Faust is there with Mephistopheles, and like if it seems like it's not going their way, they just kind of switch sides. Mephistopheles is doing his whole bit where he's like being a trickster god. He convinces this like poverty community, like there's a lord and like he doesn't have any money and everyone's like pissed and angry and he just is like, let's invent paper money. This is worth 1,000. Like you're all rich now. And like he's just like cackling because he knows how that will end, as do the readers of Faust Part 2. Faust himself though just seems annoyed. Like he is annoyed when he's talking to all these like generals and stuff and they ask him to do magic tricks. He's like, he is annoyed when Mephistopheles promises that he'll do something and then he has to do it. Like he is just so bored. And it's not until they do a battle and Faust is awarded some land. And he has like a shitty land that's like on this shore and he's like, I want to reclaim the land from the sea. And he starts doing that. He has all these people working. And if anyone doesn't like his plan of reclaiming land from the sea, he kills them. And that's when he starts seeing value in the world. He's like 100 years old. He sees what he's built. And these witch-like characters they like resemble the old gods, like the fates. It's then after he's built his land from the sea and made mistakes with his peoples, he looks around and he realizes that like, I did it. I did something. Stay, moment, stay. I reclaimed the land from the sea. And he resigns himself to damnation. But then God says, he is saved. You know, it's like symmetry, it rhymes. And I'm going to be honest. I didn't get it. I loved it. I had a fantastic time reading. And like the first like 1,000 lines, I was like reading it and thinking about what it said and then Googling to try and understand, because this poem is just, it's mostly references to philosophy, to like ancient classics, to different cultures, and I just don't know a lot of things. And so I would read it and I would try to find the answer. And then eventually I just Googled, what the fuck is up with Faust Part 2? And I came upon this Reddit thread of someone having a similar crisis. And in those comments, I was recommended this video, which is a lecture by Michael Sugru. He's a guy who was like a professor, and during the pandemic, his daughter started posting his lectures on YouTube, and they kind of picked up a bit and gained popularity. And they're very good. And the Faust lecture, which I will link below, is also very good. Although, because this is like a standard college lecture, he is like drinking water and you have to listen to the slurping sounds. No one edited it out. But he died recently. I just wanted to mention that this was a great lecture because, like, this is what Faust is about. Faust is about producing something. Faust is about making art, right? And this guy, he didn't just sit in, like, his silent academic tower. He did the Faust thing, right? He made this lecture to try and teach us about Faust. And I thought it was great. But also, that lecture really inspired me to just read it. Like, after I watched this, I was like, okay, I get the general message of what Faust Part 2 is supposed to be. I understand that someone could spend a year of their life reading and trying to understand this, but I'm just going to enjoy it. So I just read through it, and of course, the translation's really good. It's beautiful poetry, and I missed a lot of the references, but I really had a great time reading it. I always enjoy finding something so complicated, like something that took so much effort, something that you could spend your life trying to decipher. It makes me happy to see that these kind of things exist. I enjoyed reading it, but I missed a lot of stuff, right? So I imagine if I go back and read it again, I would get a totally different view of it. I would enjoy different bits of it, much like Goethe himself spent 60 years writing this. I could spend 60 years reading it. You could spend your life on this. There's these themes of creation being salvation and achievement being the journey. And it's amazing that that is the message when Goethe spent 60 years creating this work. In Part 1, you see how modern German Christianity produces this grief. Like, Gretchen is full of grief and sorrow, and she is redeemed through religion. And Faust Part 2 is kind of this movement into the modern world, this movement past that version of religion. You see science producing that weird-ass shit like the homunculus in Faust Part 2. You see the movement beyond, like, classicism, like Germany, modern Germany, 19th century Germany, which Goethe is writing about, is not like ancient Greece Part 2. It's different. It's beyond it. And in the modern world, you don't get salvation through these weird science homunculi. You don't get salvation by only studying the past. You don't get salvation through standard Christianity. In Goethe's view, you get salvation through your achievements, through striving for something, through building something. The effort you put in to creating art or creating technology to turn the sea into the land, to creating culture, which is what Goethe did when he wrote his book, is what saves you. Heaven is on earth. It is in you. And I think that was Faust Part 2. I don't know if it's clear from this discussion or not. But what the fuck was Faust Part 2? And also, I really recommend it. Should I learn German? Should I take a class on Faust? Should I have someone teach me Faust Part 2? Nobody can tell that it's a new day because I'm wearing the same clothes. Continuity. Actually, I don't think I was wearing a jacket, but it's so cold. Is the jacket going to be too rustly? That's the question. It's going to be fine. Okay. Coffee. And like we talked about Faust. There are, of course, many, 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 many other Fausts. But the most famous one was by Goethe, and we went through that one. And so now I think we are prepared to talk about Mephisto. However, I mean, honestly, did we need to? Because I knew before I went in, Faust is about a guy who makes a deal with the devil and a tragedy happens. But like, what's your favorite version of Faust? Comment your favorite version of Faust below. Okay. I feel like it was so long ago that I was like, oh, I read Mephisto. So I'm going to recap Mephisto again. I don't know if I did. Mephisto is a book from 1936 by Klaus Mann. Klaus Mann was born in Munich in 1906. He was an actor, a director, a writer. He described himself as a liberal anti-fascist and cosmopolitan, which I think just sounds very fancy. In 1933, he did a cabaret with his sister, and I did use that as an excuse to rewatch that movie. 10 out of 10. And he kind of was very critical of Hitler, like openly and loudly. And he was in Spain doing some theater when Hitler officially came to power in 1933. And so he didn't go back to Germany. He escaped to Switzerland and then eventually came to America. He published a journal called Die Sammlung. Should I learn German? It's the collection, and he published the works of German authors who had fled Nazi rule. And he especially spent time and text condemning those who were kind of ambivalent towards the Nazis. Like, well, they're not hurting me. He was pointing out the moral dilemma of taking money from a government, like accepting a job from a government who is doing heinous things. In 1934, he was stripped of his German citizenship, which is a thing Nazis do, by the way. They strip people of their citizenship. So he writes Mephisto in 1936 after he's lost his German citizenship and he's still in Europe. And this is, of course, immediately banned in Germany. In 1942, he moves with a lot of his family to the United States and he becomes a citizen in 1943. And he immediately joins the United States Army to, fight the Nazis, but also to kick a heroin addiction. And he is a journalist in the army. And when he gets to Germany in 1945, he does some of his most famous work. I would say his most famous book is Mephisto, but what he's most famous for is being one of the first people to report on the horrors of genocide and mass extermination done in Nazi concentration camps. And this reporting was used as evidence for things in the Nuremberg trials, which his sister Erica reported on. She was one of those who interviewed the Nazis who were high up and stuff. He died after overdosing purposefully or accidentally, depending on who you talk to, on sleeping pills in 1949. So let's talk about his book Mephisto. And the subtitle is A Novel of a Career, which I think is great. So Mephisto is the story of an actor, Hendrik Hofgen, a young communist actor in Hamburg. And he works with a bunch of other young theater people at this revolutionary theater. Like they think they're doing like really important revolutionary work, like for the cultural shift that is happening in Germany in the 1920s. And he's like a real asshole. He thinks he's the best actor. He thinks just like physically being in a theater for 16 hours a day means he's a better worker and harder worker and better actor than all the other actors. He marries a woman that he meets like pretty quickly because she has ties to the theater through her father, and he thinks that will get him ahead. Even though he marries this woman, he's actually in love with and sleeping with a black woman, a black German named Juliet, who like teaches him to dance. So he goes to her house to be like, oh, she's teaching me to dance, but like he's in love with her and they sleep together. Hendrik moves to Berlin to join the State Theater, and he can't live without Juliet, even though he's married to a different woman. And he brings her over and rents her apartment, and they continue to see each other through this whole thing. In 1932, the Berlin Theater puts on a Faust in the book to celebrate the 100th death anniversary of Goethe, and Hendrik is awarded the role of Mephostophilis. The Nazis come to power. Henry shoots a movie in Madrid, in Spain, and most of his old associations, like his old communist friends, they flee because they realize they've been blacklisted. They realize the Nazis don't like them, know who they are, know their names and faces, and like they can't possibly go back to Germany. But an old friend tells Hendrik, he's like, no, I'll put in a good word for you. It's going to be fine. Like, just come back to Berlin and work for the State Theater again. But like this time it's the Nazi State Theater. So he totally does. He totally just drops all his communism stuff and he's like, cool, I'll just like be a Nazi. This is fine. And he kind of moves up in the Nazi theater business. He gets the role of Mephisto again, and it is troubling to him. He's like consistently looking around and being like, bad things are happening around me and I'm doing great. Like, He hears about a former friend of his who's a communist, and they used to be in that revolutionary theater together, that has been arrested and been sent to a concentration camp. And he sticks his neck out and he uses his contacts in Nazi stuff, because he's a Nazi, to be like, hey guys, that one's cool, bring him out. And that guy gets convinced by Hendrik to come again be an actor for the state. And then things keep escalating. Juliet gets arrested because she's black, and they send her back to her apartment, and Hendrik knows that like they're going to send her to a concentration camp. So he convinces her to go to Paris, and he pays for this, and he's paying for where she's staying in Paris. And the Nazis find out about this, and he gets in trouble with Hitler. So to like put these rumors to bed, Henry, who got divorced from his wife a couple years ago, marries like someone higher up in the Nazis. His friend who he saved earlier, he finds out, even though he said he was just going to work as an actor, he's actually working for the State Theater and like doing his communist business in an attempt to like bring down the Nazi regime. So he actually gets sent back to a concentration camp, and Henry realizes like he can't do anything. Like there's nothing he can do. And then they're doing Faust again. And the woman casting the play is a woman that he met earlier in the book, who he called a Nazi piece of shit, and he hated her. And he talked about how much he hated her to all his friends. And he just sucks her dick so hard and tells her how great she is, until he gets the role of Mephistopheles again, you know. And he looks around and he's rich. He's famous. He can have whatever role he wants and whatever play he wants. And he does a Hamlet, and all the big Nazis come. And it's bad. He is bad. He is bad at acting. He knows his performance is bad. And the premiere of the play is incredibly successful. And everyone is giving him great reviews. And everyone is giving him standing ovations. And Henry realizes that the audience does not care if he is good or bad at acting. He is close to Hitler. He is a Nazi. They must clap. And this is a Faust, right? Henry has made a deal with the devil, where the devil in this case is just the Nazi party. He gets everything he wants at the expense of his soul. He's a bad person. He is a Nazi. No one cares if he's a good actor or not. No one cares about his art. No one cares about what play he wants to put on. No one even cares if he's a good actor or not. He has given up his soul to maintain an acting career, and all he got was being a Nazi.
Oh, son. For that, you traded your everlasting soul?
So Mephisto was written in 1936, but it was kind of banned until the 70s or so. There was a court battle trying to get Mephisto published in German, but it eventually was, and it was made into a movie, I think in combination with Germany and Hungary, in 1981. It's a really cool cover. Co-written and directed by Istvan Sabo. And the movie, I did enjoy it a lot, and the direction was really good, and the scenes were set up really nicely, and there was like a lot of interesting shots. So I googled Hungarian Szabo to see if this guy had done anything else I would have known, and that's when I learned that Szabo is a very common Hungarian last name. It just means tailor. It's like having your last name be Taylor. So, yeah. This movie won Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscars in 1981, and it also won a bunch of awards at Cannes. I bought the Blu-ray, and this bitch right here doesn't have subtitles. It's just in German. And so I couldn't watch it. I had to watch like a really shitty Russian website rip of it that had like the black box subtitles. Should I learn German? Because then I could have watched this movie. That's all I'm saying. I did really enjoy the movie. The book, though, in a video where I am talking about a Christopher Marlowe play, one of the most famous plays in the English language, and Faust by Goethe, one of the greatest works of literature ever produced. Like, I am not joking. It was fabulous. It was fantastic. If you haven't read Faust, absolutely do it. I would recommend this book. I read this one first in like my series of reading Faust, and it made me think. However, the writing was real bad, and I think it was executed quite poorly. I would not recommend this book. The movie, though, I would watch the movie, but this book did what art does, and it made me think. I read Mephisto a couple months ago, and it's obviously very prescient in America in 2025 when fascist losers have taken over our government. Specifically, this book, Mephisto, it made me think about the, 10% of people who will hear me say the American government in 2025 is full of fascist losers, and they'll go like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, 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 you can't just call anybody you don't like a Nazi. I have a specific definition of Nazi, of fascism in my head, and that definition will never be met. And hey, aren't you just as bad as the Nazis for saying the word Nazi? Oh my God. Do you know these people? I would love to call them Mephistos. Like this guy. Like Mephisto, the titular Mephisto. Oh, it's Mephisto because like when you have a play, Mephostophilis, the name will be next to his lines, but it's too long, so it'll be shortened with a little dot. Mephisto. You get it. Okay. Those people, they're Mephistos like this guy. This guy's not a bad guy. He just wanted to be an actor. And like, I guess, yeah, he joined the Nazi party and filmed a bunch of propaganda, and like a lot of people were murdered, but like specifically, he's simply an actor. How dare you call him a bad guy? How dare you? How dare you call him a Nazi, even though, like, the reason he is famous, the reason he is acting and allowed to be an actor is because he's literally a Nazi in the Nazi party. How could you say that about him? These modern-day Mephistos, they haunt me. They follow me everywhere. They leave me comments. They say, whoa, 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 actually both sides are bad. Like, I know the Republicans are in charge of all three branches of government, and they're like bombing random Venezuelan fishermen, and they're protecting pedophiles, and they're separating families and trapping innocent children and adults, American citizens, in concentration camp facilities. Sure, those guys are bad, but aren't you just as bad because you called them fascists for doing all those things? Big brain energy with these dumbasses. I don't know why. I don't know what the Mephistos stand to gain by being like, listen, I don't agree with them, and I will absolutely profit from their negative policies that harm other people, but like, I'm not a bad guy. I do get it. Like, they are also just fascists. They are also just fascists, and they feel bad about it. They feel a little bit bad about, being the most famous actor in Germany because Hitler killed all the other actors. It makes them feel a little bit bad, but not bad enough to not do it. He's a Mephisto. You know of him.
Was wollen die von mir? Was wollen die? Ich bin doch nur Schauspieler.
It is a comfort to the wretched to have companions in misery. You do not have the luxury of not choosing a side. Both sides are bad. I'm not falling for it, bro. There's an Elie Wiesel quote for that, actually. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Wherever men and women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must at that moment become the center of the universe. There's this wonderful essay by Dorothy Thompson, written in 1941, called Who Goes Nazi? And it's fantastic. It's like a dinner party scene, and it just describes the most boring of us, the most pathetic of us, like the saddest losers who are so easily convinced that they are better than other people. Those are the losers that go Nazi. It's 100-year-old essay, nearly 100 years old. And it's still the exact same people. It's the exact same Mephistos. It's not that bad. You're overreacting. The lions would never eat my face. My most recent video on my main channel, and I think I'm going to put this one over there as well, just to spam that channel until all the Mephistos stop watching my shit. I don't want you here. Leave me alone. I got a comment over there that's just been living rent-free in my head. And I wish I had screenshotted it before I just blocked a person, because like I just block people. I think that's the best way to deal with such things. But it said something like, you're dropping a lot of dog whistles about who is and who isn't welcome on your channel. That's what they said. And it was on a video where I called racists and racism stupid. And I mean, I'm pretty sure I just said it that way. Like, if you are racist, you are stupid. Racism is stupid. It's a thing stupid people do. And like, that's not a dog whistle. Like, a dog whistle is something only dogs can hear. And it's what you do when you want to like wink, wink, nudge, nudge to like the other dogs. It's the thing Nazis do, by the way. I feel like I speak pretty plainly. And if I say racism is stupid, and if you are a racist, you are stupid, and you're watching that video and you're like, whoa, 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 I guess I'm not welcome here. Like, yeah, dude, you're not. Leave me alone. What? On my last video, I was like, I'm not gonna make science videos for a while because all these science haters are watching my stuff. And I want them to stop and I want them to go away. I do not want these Mephistos, to leave comments about, they're trying to make me complicit, and I don't like that. Like, I got so many emails from them. Well, first of all, I got a bunch of emails of people who were like, I'm sorry, Angela, have a good day. I like your channel. I like science. And like, I'm sorry. I am sorry. I'm sorry. I'm a pathetic loser and I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't feel the need to email me. But anyway, I also got quite a few emails from Mephistos. I mean, I'm sorry, helpful viewers who love my stuff. And they were like, hey, maybe if you want people to be nicer in the comments, just stop bringing politics up out of nowhere. Science isn't political. And it's just like, you just have to have a rock for a brain to think science isn't political. Like, tell me you have never done science without telling me you have never done science. Like, the rock that has replaced your brain must be some type of pure quartz, like super low conductivity, high resistivity, like there's no electrical signals going on up there. Science isn't political. God, that one has been plaguing me for 3 full years since I've been making videos. Science isn't political. Like, everything is political. What are you talking about? And I mean, like, obviously right now it's very clear that of course science is political. Like, dum-dums are in control of the CDC and they're just making up whatever shit they want, trying to get something to stick. And it's mostly, I hate women. Clearly, you can see how science is political, right? Like, climate change is political. Like, companies who cause climate change would very much like the government not to want to stop climate change, so they put money into politics to create disinformation about climate change. That's politics. Like, what? And it doesn't even have to be like very obvious, like obviously science is political, things like that. Like, even the most minute dumb part of science is political. Like, I did this video about antimatter and I talked about this experiment that was done over like 6 decades by 3 different groups. And I was like, oh, it's really interesting. The way they applied for funding was very dependent on the politics of the time. Like, in the 60s, they're like, whoa, 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 look at all these new particles. Look at the standard model. It's so successful. We have to test these antimatter particles to test the standard model. And to do that, we'll drop antimatter and see if it falls down, right? And then in the 80s, 90s, they're like, whoa, we don't really understand gravity. You know, it would be a good test for gravity if we dropped antimatter particles and see if it fell down. Identical experiment, very different reasoning for funding. Politics, that is politics in science. And then when the experiment's finally completed, it was a totally different reason. The reason for funding was like, we need to understand antimatter to understand cosmology, to answer physics' biggest questions. Does antimatter fall down? First, we must test that, right? 3 different experiments over 6 decades politics. Science is political because everything is political. Oh my God. Like, do you ever wonder why people usually use lithium batteries instead of sodium batteries? Do you think it's because science is so beautiful and pure? It's pure logic. Of course, they always use lithium batteries instead of sodium batteries because they did a fundamental test to test exactly why lithium batteries are so much better than sodium batteries. Like, no, that would be bonkers. The reason it's usually lithium batteries instead of sodium batteries is because a couple governments funded a couple small experiments that showed that lithium batteries were better. And because batteries are a thing that makes money, the companies just ran with that, right? That's politics. Obviously, that's politics. Oh my God. Like, what science gets done is political, but also like, what country will allow for the mining of materials? And do they have lithium or do they have sodium? Which country has lax environmental laws that will allow these mines to exist, which will allow companies to create these batteries? Which countries have limited child labor laws that will allow children to mine for lithium? Why do we have lithium batteries instead of sodium batteries? Because science is logic and pure reason. Science isn't political. Oh my God. Oh my God. There's another famous German author called Thomas Mann, and when the Nazis rose to power, he kind of reflected on his role. Let me just read you the quote. I must regretfully own that in my younger years I shared that dangerous German habit of thought which regards life and intellect, art and politics as totally separate worlds. It's not separate, my dudes. Science is political. Obviously it is. Oh my God, like duh. But also, insisting the media you watch refrain from mentioning politics is wild because you don't think it's political. No one should mention it. And I mean, how could I make a science video in 2025 and not mention the cuts to NSF funding, to not mention just the destruction of decades of longitudinal studies on cancer research? How could I make videos about science in America in 2025 when literal scientists who were here legally, happily working and doing science are now trapped in concentration camp style detention houses? We're not calling them concentration camps, I guess, because it's not the same thing. How could I not mention in a science video in 2025 that the Department of Education is being destroyed and all of the children of America are being robbed of the chance to understand and learn science, which will dramatically affect how they are able to function in the world? You just don't want me to mention it? You guys know about Python? Python, the coding language, right? Python changed the face of science by making coding just like incredibly accessible, but also like it's like what everyone uses now. So if you learn Python, you are now, like, it just became the universal language of science coding. And also it's really good at making graphics and plots and doing data analysis. And they run on a government grant. And just very recently, the government was like, hey, you can totally have this $2 million grant, but you cannot do any DEI stuff. And so they were like, well, then we don't want it. How do I not mention that? How do I not say, like, hey, the government is literally handicapping every single American citizen. We are no longer going to be able to do science on the world stage. We will no longer be able to understand all of the cool stuff that is being done in science. They are stealing that from us. And you Mephistos, you feel like you can make comments and you can send me emails and be like, babe, stop talking about politics. It's not science. Like, do you realize who you sound like? It makes me furious that wait, Faust and the Furious, that's pretty good. Has anyone done that? Is that anything? Faust and the Furious. Look, you think both sides are the same and you just don't want to get involved. You're a good person. You're just trying to watch a science video that ignores everything that's happening in science right now. But like, bro, there's an Elie Wiesel quote for that. Like, go off, king. Whatever. What makes me furious is that obviously not all of you. It's just that both sides are bad people. I'm sure most of the people watching this know exactly the type of person I'm talking about. These Mephistos. It's been like a decade of like, whoa, whoa, whoa. the Republicans are protecting pedophiles, but aren't you just as bad for pointing it out and saying the word pedophile? Like, you know these people. Commiserate in the comments below about the Mephistos in your life. But, like, they're also here. They're here. They're sending me emails. They're leaving me comments. What makes me furious, the Mephistos in the audience who are like, well, fascism is not that bad, and it's not like technically super exactly identical to Nazis, so how can you even call it fascist when you see stuff like this? You Mephistos, you are complicit. And I think you know that. That's why it makes you feel bad when people are like, you're a piece of shit. But what makes me furious is that you feel like somehow you have a right to my brain and what I say and what type of videos I make. It makes me furious that you think you can email me and be like, I love your videos, but if I could just say, could you stop being anti-fascist? In fact, it would make a better viewing experience for me if you were just like a little bit more fascist in the videos you make about science and how science is cool. Do you hear yourself? I do understand like the urge to just not want to doom scroll and to see anything else and not have to think about all the things that are actually happening. And you know, I wish that I could do that. I wish that for me too. I wish I didn't have to live in interesting times. I wish it need not have happened in my time.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
Let's end this section with another Thomas Mann quote. You know, German thinker, writer, philosopher. Why not? Because we deserve a little treat. Fascism is so thoroughly false that honorable youth throughout the world should be ashamed to have anything to do with it. Sorry, let's get back to the video. Back to the regular programming. So fun fact, Mephisto, based on a real guy. That's right. We are now a drama channel, except the drama is German and it's the 1920s through like the 1960s. Sometimes I wish I had a co-host. Like imagine a person sitting over here who's like not aware of the drama. They've never read Mephisto, so I can tell them like, did you know? Did you hear? Based on a real piece of shit. Did you know that? And they would be like, oh, what? Oh my, like, you know, the way I'm describing a podcast to you. I'm sorry, but I do hope somewhere out there, someone is like listening to this video while they're on a run or something, and when I drop all of the very hilarious details about what a loser the real life Mephisto was, you can be like, oh my God, right? That would be fun. So Klaus Mann, author of Mephisto, he wrote a play called Anya und Esther. It starred Klaus Mann, his sister Erica Mann, and their friend Pamela Wedekind, and Gustaf Grndgens. Gustaf had read Klaus Mann's play and he kind of sought him out and was like, let's put this show on. You see, Klaus and Erica Mann are the famous children of Nobel Prize winning author Thomas Mann. Thomas Mann won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1929, principally for his great novel Buddenbrooks, which has won steadily increased recognition as one of the classic works of contemporary literature. You know of him. I mentioned some quotes from him earlier. Thomas Mann, very famous. Pamela Wedekind is also the famous daughter of a famous author, Frank Wedekind. You also know of him. He wrote Spring Awakening, which of course later got adapted into the musical Spring Awakening. You know of it. Mama who bore me, mama who gave me no way to handle things and made me so sad. Yeah, okay. And you might have noticed this, but Gustaf Grndgens is also like 7 years older than all these very young 20-somethings. And he's also not in any way famous like the others. So very specifically, it was almost like he was seeking famous people that he could latch onto, but like, what if they were a little bit younger than him and less experienced so he could kind of control the whole situation? Yeah. So when Klaus, Erica, and Pamela ended up being super vocal liberal anti-fascists who had like their revolutionary theater going, Gustaf Grndgens was like, yeah, dude, I totally agree. Like, I am also like that. Thank you. Let me be in the play. Let me star in the play that you're doing. I would love to be in a play with you because it'll be in the news because everyone who's here has a famous father. Also, all of these people were gay. Wait, like the 4 people we're talking about, Erika, Klaus, Pamela, and Gustaf Grndgens, but also the famous fathers, Thomas Mann and Frank Wedekind. That's kind of interesting. Anyway, so Klaus and Gustaf were together, and Erika and Pamela were together. Klaus got engaged to Pamela, and Erika got married to Gustaf. So Klaus was dating his brother-in-law. Editing Angela will make a diagram, because that's kind of confusing. And all of these people were in their early 20s, so of course none of these relationships lasted in any way, but they all kind of knew each other. In 1933, Klaus Mann and Gustaf Grndgens were in Spain doing a play when Hitler came into power, and Klaus was like, I am absolutely not going back to Germany because, like, we're known revolutionaries, we're known anti-fascist, and also we're all super gay, and everyone knows that. It's probably not safe to go back to Germany. And he tried to convince Gustaf to also not go back to Germany. And Gustaf was like, it's probably going to be fine. He rolls back up in Germany and he's like, I love Nazis. I would love to be a part of the Nazi party, and I would love to be an actor inside the Nazi party. I would love to be a famous Nazi actor. That's in 1933. And Klaus writes this novel kind of based on those real life events and publishes it in 1936. A book about a loser and a bad actor who pretends to be left-wing for clout, but when the Nazis come to power, immediately switches sides to try and become famous. 1936, when this is published, is long before the end of the Nazi regime, so Gustaf had a lot of time to reflect on this, which I find fascinating. Klaus Mann also changed the main character from being a gay man to being a man who was, like, in love with a black woman. And that's because Klaus Mann is a solid dude, and he realized everyone would realize this was about Gustaf Grndgens. And if Gustaf Grndgens had had a boyfriend, that boyfriend would have been persecuted. So he changed it to be a black woman, because that black woman doesn't exist because Gustaf Grndgens is gay. But he figured it was like a similar level of sexual deviancy, according to Nazi Germany, I guess, for the purposes of the novel, to still have that plot point. And Klaus Mann maintains throughout his life that the main character of Mephisto, while he resembles Gustaf Grndgens, it wasn't necessarily about him. It wasn't true to life. It was just instead about a specific type of person. You could call them a Mephisto. That's what I would call them. And I feel like in the 1940s and the 1950s, Klaus Mann going around being like, it's not about Gustaf Grndgens, that man that I was publicly in a relationship with and like definitely like went and did a Nazi, might not have sounded like a good excuse. But like now, in 2025, these Mephistos are everywhere, right? These Mephistos who are like, I'm not like a bad guy. I'm just like super willing to profit off the fascism. I mean, I'm a good person. Nothing bad is happening to me, and so it's really easy for me to ignore the suffering of others. That's all I'm saying. Like, that specific type of person, the Mephisto, as in this book, totally exists. So whether or not the book and the movie is specifically about Gustaf Grndgens was a Mephisto. He was this type of person. When this book was released in 1936, it was banned in Germany, but it kind of circled around. And everyone was like, holy shit, this is obviously about Gustaf Grndgens. And at that time, when this book came out, calling him a loser and a pathetic piece of shit, in the book, the actor is like, I really want to do Hamlet, and he does Hamlet, and everyone claps, even though it's shitty because he's a Nazi. Gustaf Grndgens was starring as Hamlet in Berlin, like in the book. And if this photo of Gustaf Grndgens starring in Hamlet in 1936 looks familiar, well, that's right. In 1960s Faust from West Germany, Gustaf Grndgens played Mephostophilis. Imagine, join me on this thought train. You are a shitty actor and a shitty person, okay? You will say, you will do whatever will make people like you and put you in plays and clap for you when you do your shitty acting. And that includes being a radical leftist when it's convenient and following the famous children of famous authors around so they like you even though they're like a decade younger than you. I mean, it's not weird when you're adults, but it's weird when you're like 27 and 19. Do you know what I mean? And then, you're totally willing to like go be a Nazi. You're totally willing to create and star in Nazi propaganda even though you are a gay man and gay men are persecuted by the Nazis. And your old lover writes a book about you, but it's not really about you. And in the book, the main character is a fucking loser who's bad at acting, and all he wants to do is play Mephistophilis. Then he fails Hamlet, and then he goes back to playing Mephistophilis. And then imagine, it's 1960, post-World War II. 24 years after this book has come out, calling you a fucking loser who just wants to play Mephistophilis all the time. And you, 24 years later, again decide your only dream is to play Mephistophilis. So you finance a film called Faust, and you hire your adult adopted son to direct it, and you cast yourself as Mephistophilis. What a fucking loser.
Oh, son, for that you traded your everlasting soul?
So the Faust movie comes out in 1960, and it seems like Germans really like this version, and they also really like Grndgens as Mephisto, I guess. The guy who directed it, his only other credit is suing the publishers of Klaus Mann's Mephisto book for publishing it, which is very funny because you don't go out and admit that the book is about you or your dead adopted father, I guess. That makes it worse. Like you're just reading this and you're like, hey, I read a book about a horrible, evil loser and it resembled my father. I must sue. The only thing that would make it worse is if, I don't know, you finance your own movie called Faust and you cast yourself as Mephistopheles and then you petition your government to submit it to the Oscars as the best foreign language film, even though there are better options that year, and the government acquiesces because you are so famous and it doesn't even get nominated in the category, only for 21 years later someone to make a movie about the book that characterizes you as a fucking loser who only ever wants to play Mephistopheles, and it's called Mephisto, and it comes out and it wins that same Oscar in that same category. Nazis are always the losers. However, I do think it's weird that on this Mephisto journey, I was going to read about the post-war life of Gustaf Grndgens, and it really seems like people just were like, yeah, oopsie doodles, you were an out and proud Nazi, but like, it's fine. That's crazy to me. Post-war, Grndgens was imprisoned by the Soviets for 9 months, and he was released because of communist actor Ernst Busch. Apparently, the Nazis had captured Ernst Busch and put him in a concentration camp, and Grndgens stuck his neck out and was like, hey guys, don't kill that guy, please. And that happened in real life, which is interesting because there's a similar plot point in the book. Anyway, apparently this one act is enough to exonerate Grndgens in the eyes of like a huge fraction of people, which is so strange to me. Like, oh, so Grndgens, Gustaf, you were totally cool with all the other people being murdered. You were totally cool with that. But like when it was a friend, a guy you knew, you were like, oh, not that guy. Like, that's worse. That's worse. It means you were aware of the atrocities. You knew they were terrible, and you didn't want it to happen to a friend, but you were totally cool with it happening to everyone else. That's worse. Isn't that worse? That makes you a piece of shit. That's no exoneration. I don't understand. I hate Gustaf Grndgens, but the Germans just, I feel like they didn't. I mean, obviously not all of them, but they just seem to welcome him back in. Like a literal propagandist for the Nazi party, and they're like, be an actor again, I guess. And this is real. Like, they did not publish Mephisto in Germany until the 70s. There was a whole thing where West Germany was like, we want to protect Gustaf Grndgens. He's a famous actor. Like, isn't that crazy? I feel like we should be better than this when condemning the indefensible acts of fascist collaborators. But that's just me, I guess. You will read random reviews of movies or essays about the work of Gustaf Grndgens, and they're like, well, he was just a little guy. He was just an actor. Like, look at his IMDb trivia page. The actor Gustaf Grndgens is one of the most controversial, but also undisputably one of the most important German actors. His part as hanger-on to the Nazis was overrated and a one-sided view, although he took upon huge risks for others in this difficult time. Like, what? I don't understand how you can type that. When 4 little boxes later, it shows the fact that he tried to willingly sign up for the German army in 1943. In 1943. I know that this website is dumb and all these comments are user submitted, but these users are real people who are like, the Nazi thing, it was totally overblown, and it's like he volunteered to go to the front for Germany as a Nazi in 1943. 43. What the fuck? The whitewashing of these guys. We absolutely must do better. You can even look at his Wikipedia page. He starred in a propaganda film for Nazi Germany in 1941. And then a user has added with no citation, against his will and unpaid. And what do you mean? What do you think? Why do you think it's unpaid? What do you mean? If someone attempted to force you to act in a Nazi propaganda film at this very moment, would you comply? Would you do it? Or would you act horribly, or would you not do it, or would you stand there silently? He made the choice to do it. And what do you mean he wasn't paid? He was paid in prestige. He was paid in his role as the theater director in the government theater, the Nazi government theater. That was his payment. And also, that same paragraph ends with, and then he volunteered for the German army in 1943 to be a Nazi in 1943. Why? Where? What? It's the Mephistos, man. They're all over the internet commenting on Wikipedia being like, whoa. Just because he worked for the Nazi government and did Nazi propaganda films and was aware of all the murders and the genocide happening in the camps, just because he wanted to join the German army in 1943, doesn't mean he was a Nazi. Come on. He was a scared little boy. God, if you are offline right now, actually, the internet moves so fast. I wonder if this is over. But there's this guy with no experience in politics but billionaire associations who is running for Susan Collins's Maine Senate seat. And he has a Nazi tattoo. He's running as a Democrat. God, he had a Nazi tattoo. And the story has unfolded where he was like, I got it in the army when I was just a little guy. I didn't know it was a Nazi tattoo. And it's like, okay, but then you left it on your body for 20 years because you're an adult man. But now it's like, oh, he definitely knew it was a Nazi tattoo and was totally fine with it. But anyway, when this got posted on Blue Sky, there were so many people that were like, whoa. This guy deleted his response to my tweet. But he was like, I mean, yeah, he has a Nazi tattoo, but has he ever done anything to say he was a Nazi? I mean, all of his words say that he's a good, liberal guy. But you can't say he's never done anything as a Nazi because he got a fucking Nazi tattoo, man. What does it take for these Mephistos to recognize a Nazi? Why are they defending this man? Throw him in the trash. It's not even... Anybody else could run against her. Any other Maine man who's not a Nazi would probably be a better fit than the Maine man who's a Nazi, right? These people, these Mephistos, what does it take? And that's a rhetorical question because these complicit morons will never accept that someone is a Nazi, even if they work with Nazis, call themselves Nazis, star in propaganda films for Nazis, offer to join the Nazi military in 1943. They will never call them Nazis. Anyway, obviously the Faust story is very important to Germany. And I saw a lot of he was a bad guy, he was a Nazi, but he was an incredible actor, and he is the best Mephostophilis. Which, again, I find this seems so embarrassing for him. Gustaf Grndgens, imagine the only thing you are famous for is playing a role that you were only awarded because the government, the fascist regime at the time, had all the other actors in the country fleeing from fascism or locked up in a camp or murdered them, right? The only reason you got that role is because all the other actors were gone. And then in your 60s, after this humiliation of being a Nazi piece of shit, you self-finance a film to play the same role. It's pathetic. It's so pathetic. And again, I don't know if I made this clear. How do you even know he was a good actor? Like, if you imagine all the actors in Germany in 1932, right? And then Hitler comes to power in 1933. All the artists fled, right? Or they were murdered by the state, or they were like, I'm probably not going to participate in the Nazi theater. I will just work a farm or something, right? He's not the best actor. He's simply the best actor, asterisk, who was also willing to work with Nazis. You know, like, probably it's just a numbers game. He wasn't even anywhere close to being the best actor. Fascists do this thing. It's like the opposite of DEI, right? Like, DEI is to support everyone. Like, oh, some kids don't have access to calculus. Maybe we could spend some money and do a DEI effort and give them a little summer school before they go to college so that they can catch up on calculus. And that way, when all the kids take calculus, everyone's seen it, right? Everyone's on the same playing field. And the real stars, those kids who are like the best ever at calculus, are able to like rise up and then their talent can be seen, right? That is the point of DEI, to level the playing field so the greatness shines through. And fascists, like, they do the opposite, right? They kick everyone out, has the ability to think critically or like form their own opinion, and they choose the best actor from that pile. And like, it's just, you can't kick out the majority of people and be like, oh, we found the best actor. There's just no way that the best actor is in that pile. Fascism, it just ensures that mediocre losers are in every single position of power. And it's so obvious when you hear them speak, or see them attempt to do a physical task, or watch them use AI to write a tweet. Like, they're just losers. It's so fucking pathetic. And I just, honestly, I don't find his Mephostophilis that good. And that's just my opinion. I don't find his performance very captivating. I mean, the movie, 1960s Faust, it's good. Well, I think the lighting is bad and the stage design is bad. I think they literally just filmed the stage show, and after seeing Marlowe's Faust at the Globe and how that was filmed, I have high standards. And I mean, the acting is fine. Grndgens is fine. The standout performance, I think, is Gretchen. And like, I'm not an actor, okay? This is just my opinion. I prefer subtle performances. I mean, I guess it's not even that I prefer subtle performances. It's just like these over the top, like crazy characters. I don't think it's that impressive. That seems like an easy role to play. Like, you just get a big costume and some weird makeup and you act all crazy, right? Like, you move your body in a weird way. You randomly switch from whispering to yelling and you do a weird, odd laugh. Like, whoa. So difficult. What a good actor.
Ärmlich lang, sie steht am Fenster, sieht die Wolken ziehen. Der Herr Garten der Mäuse, der Fliegen. Doch viel ist mir bewusst. Wie es wieder siedet, wieder glüht, geh ein und tröst. Noch einen Biss, so ist's geschehen, bis wir uns wiedersehen. Ich ein Vöglein wäre.
It's just makeup and talking in a weird way and moving your body in like an uncomfortable way. Like, that's not difficult. The being crazy school of acting just, it's not impressive. It just seems easy to me. Actors do say that Goethe's Mephistophilis is a difficult character to play because there's this quote from him where he says this: I am the spirit that negates, and rightly so, for all that comes to be deserves to perish wretchedly. 'Twere better nothing would begin, thus everything that your terms sin, destruction, evil, repent, that is my proper element. Goethe is so good, right? That's great. Oh my God. But yeah, I feel like acting like the spirit that negates would be very hard to do. I just don't think he's achieving that. He's just acting like a crazy guy. I also think he's too old. He's 60 in this. His movements are that of an old man. I'm sure he was better when he was playing this exact same role for his entire life, including 30 years earlier when he was 30. And it's really embarrassing. I'd like to repeat that it's super embarrassing that he's like Germany's greatest actor and like all he did was play the same character over and over. Like, surely you have had better actors since Gustaf fucking Nazi Grndgens, right? What if I told you that Gustaf Grndgens wasn't the only thinly veiled famous German in Mephisto. That's right, there's more drama. So, Heinrich, the actor in this book, who's based on Gustaf Grndgens, but also not really, does a marriage to someone who's the daughter of a famous person. He marries Barbara. Dude, I love how Germans say Barbara. Barbara. He marries Barbara, who's based on Erika Mann. And her father is a famous writer, literary guy in the book, and that guy's meant to be Thomas Mann, Klaus's own father, Thomas Mann. Okay, so the Mann family, there's a lot going on there, but Thomas Mann has a brother, Heinrich Mann, who's older. Heinrich was also an author, but he was also an outspoken anti-fascist in the late 20s, early 30s. He had to escape Germany much earlier than a lot of other people because he was so anti-fascist, right? He moved to France. France became occupied as Heinrich moves to America. Heinrich and Thomas have a strained relationship because they are both writers, and Thomas Mann is just way, way more successful than Heinrich Mann, but also Thomas is much more conservative than Heinrich Mann. He's kind of a nationalist, right? And Klaus, who's young, he's growing up, and he's obviously aware of the dangers of fascism. He is like a canary in a coal mine, just like, hey, it's the 20s, here's my cabaret about what a piece of shit Hitler is, right? Klaus, he's obviously aware of the dangers of fascism, writes this book, Mephisto, in 1936. He saw the dangers of the Nazis. He saw their endgame much, much faster than his father Thomas did. So Klaus, he looks up to his uncle Heinrich, and he's like, see, this is a man speaking out. This is a man doing what's right, even putting his life in danger to say, hey, fascism is bad. Well, his father is just like, we'll see how this goes, right? Let me reread the Thomas Mann quote that I read to you earlier. I must regretfully own that in my younger years, I shared that dangerous German habit of thought which regards life and intellect, art and politics as totally separate words. Suffice to say, there is so much drama wrapped up in this very famous family, with Thomas Mann being this amazing, celebrated author, and his brother Heinrich and son Klaus just being so disappointed that their patriarch did not use his fame and his talent to speak out against fascism earlier. Of course, Thomas Mann does come around. He escapes Germany. He speaks out about the Nazis. He admits his failures, like in that quote. I think that's very important. But what must it have been like in 1936 to read your son's novel and see how you are portrayed inside of it as complicit as a Nazi sympathizer because you're not saying anything? Would it convince you to be more outspoken? Perhaps now you, famous Nobel Prize winning author Thomas Mann, would like to speak out against the Nazis. How would you do that? I have an idea. You're from Germany. You're Thomas Mann. What if you wrote a novel based on the most famous legend in Germany, Faust? You know, guy makes a deal with the devil, tragedy, but you make it about Germany, the country. The country makes a deal with the devil, the Nazis, tragedy. Whoa. Listen, Klaus Mann wrote a book. It's a Faust, right? And in this Faust, Germany is the Faust, the Nazis are the devil, tragedy, right? I'm not saying it's an original idea. I am sure that every time anyone brought up Faust post 1932, people made the connection. But imagine your father, Nobel Prize winning author Thomas Mann, hears that you wrote a Faust in 1936, and 7 years later, he decides, I'm going to write my own Faust. And 4 years after that, it's published, and that book is Dr. Faustus. This book is so fucking good. Listen, Mephisto, it's a great story. I love the drama from real life. I love that in Mephisto, Klaus Mann publicly calls Nazis pieces of shit Nazis. Congratulations on ensuring Gustaf Grndgens' legacy, Klaus Mann. He deserves nothing more than what you gave him, but also, your book is not very good. And your father wrote a better one. Your father took your idea and wrote a masterpiece. This book is so good. I've never read Thomas Mann before. This was my first one, but oh my god. So this is Faust. Guy makes a deal with the devil, tragedy. The main character is a guy, the devil is syphilis, which causes insanity, and then tragedy. But also, the main character is Germany, the devil is nihilism, which causes Nazis, and also tragedy. It's told from the perspective of a friend, Great Gatsby style, of the main guy who's a genius musician. Here, art, like in Faust Part Two, can save, can redeem, etc. I don't even know what to say about it. So Dr. Faustus by Thomas Mann, it's a story of a lifelong friendship and also like neurodivergence, but maybe I'm putting like a modern thing, shoving it in there. It's the story of insanity and religion. It's the story of those who live these like artistic lives and what they owe their communities and whether or not they are separate from their communities. And it's the story of Germany and how it changed as a country over this 100-year period, how it developed along with technology from like small towns, and how these families grow and change and become like giant cities and they're torn apart and it's brother against brother. I don't know, man. You could read the whole thing as like a metaphor for fascism, but you could also just read the whole thing literally as a story about a guy and his friend. I don't want to go through all the details because like it's a Faust. You know what happens in a Faust. Guy makes a deal with the devil in tragedy, but like, it's really good. It's a really good book. I can't imagine reading your son's shitty novel. I'm so sorry, Klaus, man, it's not very good. Seeing yourself inside of it and saying, I'm gonna write my own version of this as an act of redemption. That's a fucking Faust. That's a Faust. Thomas Mann pulled a Faust while writing his own Faust. Fuck. It is so good. I love when I make videos about books and like a lot of the books are good. I really like that. End of video. That was Faust. Since I'm not making science videos anytime soon, I still am going to do it on my Patreon, but I think I'll do my Patreon credits here. Thank you guys. I don't usually do them on my second channel. I might put this on my main channel. I don't know, but like here they are. Thank you for your support. I appreciate you. Have you read Faust? I am like deep in Faust. I am like deep into the Faust lore. I am all over it. Send me your favorite Faust. Leave a comment below. The devil went down to Georgia, and he saw a young man sawing on a fiddle and playing it hot, and the devil challenges him to a fiddle contest. This is a Faust, right? Johnny is Faust, the devil is the devil, and the tragedy doesn't happen because Johnny is such a good fiddler, I guess. Except, every time I listen to this song, it's a Charlie Daniels song, the devil's fiddle solo sounds like shit. It's just bad. Like, first of all, it's mostly like bass for like 30 seconds. It's like dun 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 dun, and then he screeches and sloppily plays just the worst, most basic garbage fiddle solo. Like, it sounds bad, probably because your fiddle's made of gold, dude. That's probably not good for the acoustics. And then Johnny's like, fire on the mountain, boys, run, right? And his is like a pretty standard fiddle solo. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not like super impressive. And then Johnny wins. Of course he wins because the devil's solo sucked, but like, neither of these fiddlers are great, right? Have you ever like listened to the fiddling? And the devil went down to Georgia. Like, am I crazy? If the song is selling itself as a contest between the world's best fiddler and the devil who uses devil magic to do some pretty serious fiddling, I expect some pretty serious fiddling. I like Alison Krauss a lot. Something like this would have been nice, I guess. Ooh, fun fact. Alison Krauss, she plays and tours with Union Station, right? Union Station has Jerry Douglas, probably the best dobro player you'll ever see, ever lived, but also Dan Tyminski, who's just like such a good bluegrass vocalist, right? And both of these guys and the rest of Union Station are the band, the Soggy Bottom Boys, from the Coen Brothers movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Full circle moment, because that has a Faust in it. We did it.